Well, good evening and welcome to the Collateral podcast. So good to have you with us. My name is Charisma and I'll be your host this evening as I'm joined by Whoopsie. How are you doing today, Whoopsie?
Fantastic, mate. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's too good. And then we're joined by a very special guest today. You might have seen him casting some matches around the Valorant scene in OCE. But tonight he's a guest on this podcast, and that is Taytems. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how are you all doing? Hopefully good.
Yeah, great. So, for the people watching that mightn't know who is Taytems, would you mind giving us a little bit of a rundown, like who you are, kind of how you've gotten into the... what I'm really interested in is how you got into the casting scene, actually.
Well, started off doing Overwatch production back in 2017 for a couple amateur tournaments from AOE. You may or may not know who they are, but they do amateur esports stuff and some like semi-pro stuff, but mostly amateur stuff. So I did a lot of that back then, and then I kind of got bored of it, and that was like late 2018, I think. And then Valorant was like a way better game for me in terms of the way it's structured and the way I like to, look at gaming. And so then I started doing I started, playing it a lot first, and then once I got my head around the esports scene for it and stuff, I started casting it, and here we are. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, of course, you are a community caster for LPL, and I believe you were doing some observing work for the VOT. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
Really.
All right. Well, tonight we're going to get stuck into what is probably the hot topic of the last couple of days. And that is news just broke on Tuesday, I believe, Monday or Tuesday, that Chiefs, ESC, and Order will no longer be flying over to America to participate in the last chance qualifiers to make it to the Valorant World Championships. It's coming out now that it's been an error on the side of Riot, that they just were not organized enough. They weren't prepared. There was too much unknown, and the things just weren't organized and lined up for Chiefs and Order to get over there. And it was widely known that Ronsky, the entry duelist for Chiefs, was already at the airport when he found out that he was going to get turned around and put into quarantine for 14 days and then have to go back home. So unfortunate times, but gentlemen, it's not a good look for Riot.
No. I think
no.
yeah, I think this is a really, really poor planning on the part of Riot, especially considering, like, didn't they literally had just flown Peace out to Worlds, right? Or is that...
Yeah, Peace had just flown out, yeah.
So it's like there's such a disconnect. Like, how did the League esports people not just even let the Valorant people know, like, oh yeah, you're doing OCE stuff? Yeah, there's like more processes involved in getting teams out of the country. Because, like, obviously, you know, it is harder. It's not like it's the same process as it would be getting people from Europe or something, or flying people from the US into Europe. Different stuff, especially with the state of COVID here. So, like, it's harder, but, like, they just did it. Like, how have you not? It's ridiculous, honestly.
Yeah, it's incredible that no one was like looking into it. Like, they're just like, oh, let's leave it till the last minute. It should be right. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Just kind of shows like a complete lack of caring, like almost from Riot. Like, they just didn't give a damn if we were there or not. But yeah, more to your point is the fact that the league one already went there. So yeah, I got no idea how they managed to drop the ball so hard on that one, but it was an incredible job, and I don't think anyone but Riot could have pulled it off.
Yeah, well, that's right. And there was already a sense of feeling. Tate, you'd have probably a greater idea than I have. You've had a lot to do with a lot of the players in the scene. There's just been widely assumed feeling that Riot really don't care for OCE as a region. Just through avenues of how hard it is to even get anywhere outside of our region to get teams into that, and just how it's almost been like, oh, we'll let you do it, but you know, we're not that interested in it.
Yeah, like they're doing us a favor.
Yeah, that's right.
It's really odd, honestly, how like ignorant they are, because so even the TOs in OCE, there's the Valorant like overlay stuff for streams, and like the way that you can make it look cool, you can integrate it into the game, and they have that over in EU and in the US, obviously, for all of their games, even if it's just like not the official VOT or the official VCT stuff. It's like Nerd Street qualifiers and stuff like that. They still have all the extra resources and stuff, but in OCE, they haven't given us that, and there's no known date of when that will possibly like be a thing. And then additionally, pretty much every single like bit of support for OCE only came to exist in terms of like the addition to the LCQ only came to exist because of community backlash. Like, originally there was effectively going to be OCE has like its own circuit, and that's it. Like, there's no avenue of opportunity to go into the international tournaments, at least initially, and only after there was a couple pro players in EU, not in OCE, in EU complaining about it, and then something was done about it. And obviously that something wasn't really that much. It wasn't really that useful.
Yeah.
Obviously, especially now, since it isn't even happening. But yeah, like originally there wasn't even going to be anything.
Yeah, so, well, it was an absolute circus just to try and get involved in this playoff anyway, like for all the OCE teams, and they went through the ringers and they went through everything, and now it's for absolutely nothing. We're just getting treated like the ugly sister that no one really wants. But like, we're doing like the hot sister a favor, like the EU's for supporting us. We're doing them a favor by bringing them along. Yeah, it's just an absolute joke. Like, and I don't know why. Like, I feel like the OCE scene isn't like that far behind everywhere else. Like, we don't really struggle all too much, and we never really get the chance to, like, especially in LAN, go up against other countries. But I don't know. It doesn't feel like we're that far behind everyone, and we're only going to get further behind if we actually don't get a chance to play them. So, yeah, I got no idea what the game plan is here. Like, we're still like almost 30 million people strong. We're a viewership. We have like a base. Like, why not invest a little bit more into us, or at least just try and like let us play? Like,
Yeah, and I think you're right. You go.
It's kind of because I know why I'm not agreeing with the way Riot does it, but like essentially it's because it's so OCE is so like isolated that in terms of the logistics of setting things up, like if you've got an Asia qualifier or something like that, you can cover, 200, 300 million people, whereas the maximum you can cover for OCE stuff while still having like decent ping for servers and all that is like Australia, New Zealand, and that's it. So that's like 30 million people. And so it's so much less than everywhere else that Riot essentially just doesn't want to make the effort logistically.
you're
And
interested about
that's
saving
why.
money for him at this point. Like, for like, obviously when League first started off, like we were just like 150 ping warriors and getting it done. Like, I remember when League, when I first started playing League, the only option was to play on the American servers with 150 ping. But like, did they almost like leave this to the last minute because they knew they wouldn't like that they wouldn't be able to pull it off, and they just like saved all this money, and now you get like the more popular fan bases of like these other teams. Like, because that play-in bracket for the Val team was an absolute joke to begin with. So like shortening it by a couple teams probably would have made it like not so bad. So like I don't want to say that they're doing it on purpose, but I don't know. It just seems like an absolute mess, and like either someone dropped the ball or like it's working out pretty well for the bracket at this point anyway.
Yeah, well, Two Tap Tony tweeted out today the bracket that's come out for the now reviewed LCQ bracket because it's now -2 teams, and now finally it's taken OCE to be the sacrificial lamb, if you will, of the bracket to now be a double elimination.
Yeah,
and it should never have been this point.
No,
A
no,
company
but, like, it worked out really well like that.
a company as big as Riot surely would understand the necessity to run a serious tournament like this, where there's so much on the line to make it through to such a big tournament, and you only make it a single elimination bracket. Like, are we being for real? And it's taken OCE to cop the brunt of it to finally end up as a double elim. Like, this bracket was attacked and scrutinized by professionals all over the globe. Obviously, most widely seen was the whole 100 Thieves team on their own had individually tweeted about how bad the bracket was and whatnot. But it seems crazy. It seems crazy to me that it's taken Chiefs in order to be the ones to take the bullet to see any sort of change.
I mean, I don't want to say I did it on purpose, but it kind of like worked out for the best because they saved all that money on flights. Like, imagine if the Australian teams do get over there, and then more than likely, no, we lose the first elimination. Now we have to fly all the way back for like what, like a whole like 4-day activity. Like, and now the bracket is like magically fixed because the OCE teams aren't there. Like, it was dodgily put together, and it ended dodgily for Australia. But yeah, like, you don't want to. I'm not going to say they did it on purpose, but it worked out for the best.
I don't think it was like, I know you're just throwing it out there, but I think it really was
I'm
just
not saying
like
it's like an
negligence.
amazing conspiracy theory, but it really did work out for the best by dropping the two Australian teams for the bracket and for Riot.
Yeah. I honestly don't think that even after all the backlash, if OCE was still going, that they would have actually changed the tournament. I think what happened was, and this is just speculation, but they've got a fixed budget for the entire event because it's a LAN event, right? So they got a fixed budget, and it's like, this is how many days and this is how many hours we're paid for the casters, observers, and all the like staff, and this is how much we can fit in that time. And so it was like, that was the result of their fixed budget, and it was like just more poor planning, pretty much.
Yeah, well, that's right.
This is what was going to be likely scenario. Yes,
this is what was going to be so bizarre about that single elimination bracket for OCE teams. I get it wouldn't have it still would have been a logistical nightmare for any team involved if they weren't already living exactly where the games were being played. But a logistical nightmare for OCE teams that would have had to fly to America, potentially only play one best of 3, So that's an hour and a half, 2 hours max. And if you lose that, you've flown essentially 16 to 18 hours travel. You've quarantined when you get to the US. You've played your 2 hours, and then you're pretty much on a plane home the next day, and you're quarantining for another 14 days when you get back to Australia. It was just
Do you
bizarre.
quarantine going into the US? I thought it was just coming back to Australia.
Oh, well, potentially not. I thought someone told me that might have been the case, but it might not be.
You would think it would have to be like at least a day or something, though, wouldn't you? Like, I'm
Yeah,
not really
I don't
sure
think it's
either.
the same as
I think
it
it
wouldn't be the
Australia,
14
though.
days. Like Australia's just off the chain when it comes to that. But you still have to quarantine nonetheless, and it would still like so many hoops to get through just to get there. Definitely.
I know the UK was doing 7 days for a while, so I'm not. So
Yeah, UK was a mess, but like obviously all the Europe just with the open borders, like they got their own ways of sorting it out.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's so unfortunate, and I think it really got in the players' heads that it was a single elimination. There was so much on the line. Like I saw tweets from Ronsky and etc. Ronsky, most notably, the one I saw, it was like he'd almost decided that he was coming home after that first best of three.
Yeah, well, it'd be hard not to mentally check out. Like you've already got to face the adversity of versing all these other teams straight off of like the longest flight pretty much out of anyone else to get there, and like that cloud over your head that man, if we don't win this one, then we're just going all the way back, and how disappointing that would be. Like a chunk out of your life is just being given up. That's a long time to sit on a loss. So like it obviously they're already premeditating it. Yeah, it was always going to be tough for sure, but I don't know. Like it was a good opportunity for Australia, and even with the absolute obstacles they would have had to go through, to now not even have to be able to be allowed to face that adversity is just like the worst part about it all. Yeah, it's just very, very disappointing for the OCE scene to miss out on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
I just wonder. It's a different rabbit hole in a way, but did we give either of those teams good percentages of making it? Only one team could make it through that LCQ. One team, and with those teams like FaZe, 100 Thieves, I think G2 is in there.
It wasn't necessarily for me about like them making it or not, but if they could actually take a couple of these teams down, then maybe like Riot would be like forced to like invest more in the teams. Like, man, these guys actually can beat these teams. Like, even though they're on their little island so far away from everyone else, with their funny little laws and whatnot, like, man, these guys can actually compete. Like, and that would have been an awesome pathway. Like, we take down two teams. Like two of the, like, even though it's just single elimination, and like not only one of these teams is going to make it, how huge that would have been for the Australian scene to be able to say that we took these down. Like, just for like the organizations in Australia alone, like to be able to wear that and prove to everyone what we can do. And now like we're just robbed of that entirely. So yeah, no, look, in my opinion, we probably wouldn't have made it all the way through. But man, like given the Aussie way is just giving it a crack, like, and we got robbed of that as well. It's just insult to injury, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of similar to like SEA in Champions or in Masters. It's like there's no expectation that they could win, but the fact that they're playing in the international tournament or they're playing against other teams not in the region, they're just kind of proving their position. And they had Paper X was representing SEA in the last Masters. They had some pretty solid games. So I feel like, you know, even if Order and Chiefs don't go that far, if Order, you know, takes a map off XZ, or if Order takes a map off someone, or, you know, wins a best of 3 in the lower bracket or something like that, it's like worth the entire trip pretty much, because you're proving your position.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I had the feeling that there was a couple of players from these teams that if they put on a good showing in America, I think there would have been some teams looking a bit harder at them, like individuals, not whole rosters, but I think there would have been some teams in America looking at individuals to maybe bring them over. Like we've seen it with the Call of Duty League. Renegades player Predator, he's just signed with one of the big teams over in the CDL, so he's heading over there to go play in the Call of Duty League now. Because he had a good outing here. So I just had the feeling if someone like, probably the best example would be Ronsky, who was the MVP for a VOT. He was the MVP for Let's Play Live Legends. Like he was, I think it was almost pretty clear that he was the best player by a bit of a margin across VOT and LPL this year. But I think someone like him had a great chance of potentially making his way over to the US on a more permanent basis.
Yeah, like you're probably right. Yeah, like this is a tryout for the rest of the world, more or less. Like, and these people have like devoted like how many years of their life to like just to like their parents saying, "Oh, it's just a video game and stuff." Like, if they do well on this international stage, then like, man, they could have absolutely made it. Like, and what a story that would have been in itself. Obviously, the Australian team might lose a player, but now, like, if then we're actually like a target for poachers, like, because now people actually respect the scene. Like, and it's like, wow, what other hidden talent is in Australia? Like, yeah, oh man, it's just an absolute shame, really.
Yeah, it's one that's there's a lot of hurting people. It's one of these things where it's only two teams that aren't going, but I think it's a whole region that's really feeling the hurt, and that there's a whole region that is hurting about what's happened with Riot. And it is a shame, and it for a lot of players it feels like 9 months wasted time. Like this was 9 months of VOT to get to this point, and it's all just disappeared in the matter of an hour in front of their eyes, through a lack of,
from an oversight as well. Like, not for like any fault of their own. It's just that someone just literally, it was just an oversight of like how it's going to be possible to take these guys there. Like, that'd be the worst part about it. It was just that it was someone just like, whoopsie, my bad, and now they just lost this opportunity.
Yeah, that's right. Well, look, let's hope well, this is my question. Do we think there's going to be a better route for it next year, or are we going to be doomed to the same 9-month grind that we had this year?
I think maybe there might be something added because in both the statement from Order and Chiefs and also the statement from Riot after it was all announced, they did say that there was some sort of compensation in place. So whether that means that those teams will be like flying out for, I don't know, like a Masters qualifier next year or something like that, I think then there's something there. Or it just means, hey, we're giving each of these teams like $15,000 or something like that, which would be stupid. But hopefully it means the first of those two. Hopefully it means that we actually do have a spot in one of the other qualifiers, not just the end of the year Master Championship qualifiers.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it would be pretty riotous to just be able to think they can just throw cash at it and everyone's just going to move on. Just a quick question. I know League of Legends, like we can qualify for the MSI. Does Val have like an MSI or anything like that? That like we can qualify for or anything? Like a mid-season invitational?
No.
No, so like I know in League you'll have like you obviously have Worlds at the end, but like halfway through the 4 splits, like after the 2 splits to do the MSI. I wonder if that's something that would explore with Val, and then that's another major tournament that we could get involved in, but I just wasn't sure if Val did something like that yet.
They mainly just they've got the Masters tournaments, which are just like effectively minors, and then the Champions, which is the major. So I think that's the main avenue they have at the moment. I don't know how much that they'll change in the future, but I think that'll probably be for like the foreseeable future what they'll be sticking to. And for the foreseeable future also, there is no route for OCE to get into any of the international tournaments except for Champions, which is like at the end of every year. So there's like 2 or 3 Masters tournaments in the year, which we have no route to
for them at all.
Yeah.
Well, other than like trying to find a pathway for that, then yeah, I don't really see what they could do to make up for it. Like, no amount of money is gonna like put the spotlight on Australia that we deserve, especially when it comes to this.
Not unless more
really
teams
get to see us.
Not unless more teams do what Sonics and Renegades did and send their rosters overseas.
Yeah, but then like, what do we don't win anything out of that again. Now it's just like up to us. So Like, throw us a freaking bone.
Yeah, give
like,
us.
I know Valve's not that huge yet, but like, man, come on now. Like, everyone's like grinding just as hard for this as all the other games. Like, you want this to, I'm sure Riot wants this to be as big as CSGO and as big as League of Legends. Then, like, like we Australian teams have been successful in those two things. What was the name of the team for Australia?
Peace.
Peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, we had them, and then we Renegades and Counter Strike. Like, we're capable of like bringing up all this new talent. Like, yeah, I just don't understand why. Maybe the money just isn't there just right now for Val and OCE, but Riot would just have like the amount of skins. Like, you can't buy a knife for less than $40. Like, the amount of money that they would have made from OCE, like just on like microtransactions alone, just like reinvest a little tiny bit of that. Like, but yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it'd be a shame it'd be a shame if Riot did just go, oh, here's 15 grand or whatever, here's a bit of money to compensate your effort. It's like teams like Chiefs and Order, 15 grand isn't really going to bother them.
No,
they've.
It's like
it help. Like,
it's not bad.
Oh, it would help, but it's
not great.
No,
but compared to like a worldwide exposure, like it's absolutely nothing. Like, it's meaningless. Like
for example, 15 grand. I don't even know if that would cover the expenses for a roster for a full year.
Yeah, but like you contribute to it when it like
not for Order,
alleviate some.
No, not for Order.
But like I guess you'll take any money that you can get, like it's whatever, but it's not really the same thing as what they were taking away from us by what's happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's such a tough one. Like I feel really bad for a lot of players and a lot of staff that have had to go through this, and most notably Chiefs. They only just picked up this roster off Peace a week before they were supposed to fly out. It was a bit of a whirlwind sort of moment just before Peace were going to send their team over. Chiefs picked them up, and then what Chiefs had kind of planned to be their stamp on the main stage as Valorant was quickly watered down. So I don't know, but I wanted to change focus and look at a bit more of a broader spectrum. And obviously, we were talking about the Valorant teams and how they just they were going to have their opportunity to make it on the world stage. But as you alluded to before, Whoopsie and Peace they've just had a team go over to the League of Legends Worlds. Peace, they had a bit of a rough day or overnight. I believe they had a bit of a rough night at the Worlds. But Fury, they've just had a team qualify for the PUBG Worlds. So it's exciting to see that there is some OCE teams starting to make their stamp on the world stage. Like, I remember, Whoopsie, when you and I were coming through the Call of Duty scene, how the whole region got around how exciting it was that Mindfreak were going to play Call of Duty at, what they call it back then, MLG?
Yeah, I think it was the MLG circuit, yeah.
And how exciting that was happening, and everyone was all around them. And so it's exciting to see a couple teams going to their respective world championships for that game. My question is for you boys: do we reckon things in OCE are starting to shift where we're producing a better quality of content or quality of players amongst the region? But my general feeling on it is that because esports is a rising brand now and it's becoming a bit more popular, that more players are thinking that it's actually worth giving it a crack competitive gameplay, and they're kind of players that wouldn't necessarily been found before are being found now.
I think it's kind of less that we're producing more better players and more that there is way more esports exposure now globally than there used to be, and in OCE as well. So, even just a few years ago, there was absolutely no money in making anything esports in OCE, but now, like, at least there's something there to work with, and because of that, because there's like, maybe one or two orgs for each major esport willing to pay like an actual full-time salary instead of just, paying you $100 a week or whatever, that it's like enough to really push the scene forward that little bit more to get to the global events, get to the global scene. Unfortunately, of course, it was kind of killed off a little bit in terms of momentum because of COVID and all that, especially when it comes to like CS:GO. It was kind of, the scene was pretty much obliterated recently. There was Renegades didn't get to go to EPL, which is an international tournament in Europe, because of COVID restrictions. And then there was a ton of orgs disbanding because of various things here and there. So it's like, I think we got severely hindered because of the isolation from COVID. But I think next year it'll kind of be start to work towards where we were in 2019, and like beyond that as well.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like for like COVID, man, it's just decimated everybody. You'd think like if one of the only things that would be protected, like with live sporting games and stuff going down, and like attendance being shot to hell with those things, like esports would probably like thrive a little bit better because everyone just assumes it's just from behind a computer. But like the big things that we're missing out on, like you pointed to, are those mainstay tournaments, like where we can go get that international exposure. And with international exposure comes more sponsors and so, yeah, like obviously everything you listed that we're missing out on. But then once again, we go back to the Val tournament. Now we miss out on these two teams going there as well for pretty much the exact same thing. Yeah, no, it's absolutely gutting. Not really sure. Like, there's not really too much you can do about it other than trying to just like wait out the storm, obviously. But yeah, I think the Australian scene is getting better. I think we've always been like pretty good. But until we can actually go test it against like these other countries, and we're not just versing like this little pool of ourselves, you're never really going to know like how good we really are. And it's always going to be hard because we have to fly so far to go versus these people, and then like when we do, it's a one and done. And then so what really reps do we get in? Like they've probably got more better practice just going overseas and just queuing up a couple games of MM. So at least they need, like, you're not versing like the pro teams, but you're versing like a different graphic where like it's not all the exact same metas and stuff like that. So just that time is invaluable rather. So yeah, I think the scene is definitely getting better, and I think with COVID, like a lot of people are staying home more now, and a lot of people are like having a bit more of a crack, and especially like you pointed to, like there is a bit more like chance for a salary wise now. Like, 'cause if you want to be one of these like top pro players and really take a chance on yourself, you more or less have to treat it like a full-time job. So these people have been like grinding like a 9 to 5, probably longer than that, like doing all this work to get to these major tournaments for it to get taken away from them. It'd be extremely disheartening, and all we have to do is all we can do rather is just keep supporting them. Watch their streams, like, comment, donate where you can, stuff like that. We gotta it's up to us right now to try and keep us going, because like Riot, they don't really care right now about it. I hope they do compensate us because obviously all the work we've put in. But yeah, we are definitely getting better, and like us as fans, the same way if your favorite sports team, you buy their jersey, you support them, the money goes to them. Do the same for the esports boys. Yeah, that's pretty much the only way we can keep it going. I definitely think we are getting better, but yeah, more so than where we were before.
Yeah, you'd remember, Wusty, when you and I were competing quite seriously in CS in not CS:GO, in Call of Duty.
Call of Duty.
We'd get home from school at 5, and we'd play till like 2 a.m. because that's the sort of practice it required. Like it was just scrimming non-stop until 2 a.m. in the morning, and so it is nice to see that players do have a chance to be compensated for their time now. Obviously, it's far from all the great teams are doing it, and I think still there's a massive divide between the skill gap of the top 4 or 5 teams in every game, and then the rest.
Yeah,
I
agree.
I think if we even looked at Valorant, I think there's quite a significant jump from the top half of the Legends League to the bottom half of the Legends League. There's definitely a skill gap, but I think more people are coming out of the woodwork. There's more people being found. Like I was casting a tournament over the last weekend, and a guy by the name of Lou, who I'd never really heard of before, and a lot of people hadn't really heard of before, played in this tournament and just took the tournament by storm. And Two Tap Tony was calling saying he's gonna be one of the next big things in the region just by how sharp he is. So look, it's even still there's more and more people coming out of the woodwork, giving it a go. But yeah, I think the skill gap's still significant, and it's been widely regarded in CS:GO that the way NA plays CS:GO is different to the way Europe plays CS:GO, and then OCE is just it's OCE, like the way we play CS:GO is totally different again.
Yeah.
So I think it's not until you get over in those regions and you start doing your boot camps or whatever, that you finally get a grasp on what it's going to be like playing in those regions.
Yeah, well, you look at all the League of Legends teams, for example, for them to take the next step, they'll go boot camp in like South Korea. Like, because if you wanna improve yourself, you just got to go. Like you said, there is a massive difference between skill gaps for the top teams and everyone else. So there's only so much scrimming that a top tier like OCE team can do amongst itself. Like, because you're only gonna have there's like only like 3 teams that really like steel sharpen steel. There's only like a couple teams that you can scrim all the time that you will improve, and most teams don't want to do that because now you're just giving away all your strats and stuff like that. So you can only really verse like lower tier teams or even just stomping, and you don't really get too much more out of that. So you really do need boot camping. Like every time like a team, like a European team or an NA team has taken another major step, and like especially League of Legends, for example, because I'm a massive League fan, it's been like going to like Korea or like CS:GO, the NA teams going to Europe, because there is like the jumping between like obviously the top teams and then everything else, even though everything else is like better in those places. So just boot camping is a massive thing. And the only way you're gonna like really like test yourself and see how good you can really get is gonna be by doing that and doing all the internationals and stuff. But yeah, no, so I can completely agree. Like I feel like we're just getting as good as we can, but until we start being allowed to do all this stuff again, it's gonna be harder, definitely.
Yeah, I'm not too sure on Valorant, but I think the play style is different again. I don't follow too much of EU Valorant.
It's very different.
The gameplay is different.
It's radically like it's not macro stuff. It is like micro strategy and the way that's handled, because of course if you watch a VOD of like some EU teams, like if you're an OCE team, right, and you're watching a VOD of how EU teams play and how they're winning matches, you can take the macro strategies that they're using. You can take the, let's plant here, this post plant lineup, play like this, split the site like this. But when it comes to micro strategy, I feel like that's the massive difference, and it's not just Valorant, it's CS as well, because you don't really have a hands-on experience of what the micro differences are. You don't know like this triggers this exact rotation, or like this is exactly what we're looking for when X and X happen. So I feel like if OCE gets to the main stage in like CS and in Valorant, that's where the major differences are. Like you can see, they're doing the X, like they're doing the phase strat or whatever, and it wouldn't work as well as it might in phase because you don't have that hands-on knowledge of the micro strats. So yeah, that's where the difference really lies.
Yeah, I think even earlier in the year, the way or team comps were quite significant. Like, I think team comps are getting a little more diverse amongst teams. But I think earlier this year I was watching a few games and a lot of the team comps were very similar across the board. And there was almost like meta team comps for Europe where they thought this was the meta. Like I think it was Astra Sky for a good while. Was the EU team comp or the meta. So I think so. If we circle back to what we were talking about the Valorant boys, that even would have been handy knowledge for them to get over there and be boot camping for that, experiencing scrimming against those better teams or scrimming against those teams from different regions, so they can pick up on those micro things, or they can start to learn about how different the gameplay is. Because I was even watching the IEM 4 qualifiers with Order and X Direwolves playing, and I looked at that gameplay, and because I haven't watched that much local CS in quite some time, the way the game was being played was bizarre to me, because I'm so used to watching teams like Na'Vi, or G2 or like anybody like that. Like the gameplay was just so bizarre to watch because it was so vastly different.
Mm.
I think that's one of the main things, and that's why, that's half of the reason when if you go over as an OCE team in especially CS and Val, you're just gonna like get destroyed. Even if you're spending all your time there, because the pool of individuals is that much smaller in OCE, there's still like not a very high chance. Like the one exception that there has really been to that in recent times was at one point in 2020 was 100 Thieves, now Extremum, but they sort of fell off a little bit. But then Dexter transferred from Renegades over to Mouse Sports, and that's sort of like the one main exception, I think, at the moment, because he spent so much time in the international tournaments that he sort of learned the micro strategy, and that's why last year and earlier this year, Renegades were so dominant in CS:GO. Like they were just destroying everyone because they had, Dexter's massive brain strats, and so he transferred his skill over, and that's kind of like the only exception that really currently exists in like a player going to, like, in terms of what I know. I don't know many other esports except for CS and Val, so it's like the one main exception.
Yeah, it was interesting even when we had when Collateral Valorant had Mazuong and Howie play for us. They come from the Vietnamese, like they only just moved over from Vietnam, and the way they played the game and understood the game of Valorant was significantly different to like what any of our players ever did. So I think just expose like those teams. There needs to be a way, and this is what we were talking about. There needs to be a way they can expose themselves to those other regions, so they can learn and they can develop and they can develop their craft more.
The only way is really the only way is Guam servers, but everyone like hates Guam servers with a passion. It's like, so in theory you should be getting, I think it's around 70 ms or something from most of Australia, but people get like 110, 150, like unplayable FPS ping. And so like it was sort of promised as this like one way that you connect SEA, NA, and OCE all onto like one tournament, but like it's kind of been a massive failure at the moment. Hopefully in the future it works out though, because that is like the one way that you can connect to other regions. Of course, is just playing the other regions online.
Yeah, playing on a mutual server that's inconvenient for everyone involved.
Yeah, that's what just everyone sucks.
Yeah. I think the premise is the same, but it's just a bit more of anticipating shooting and whatnot.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But gentlemen, we're going to have to call it there. Taytems, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. It's been great having you with us. Whoopsie, it's been good having you. We're gonna wrap it up there, but make sure you're tuning in next Monday afternoon for the Collateral Sports podcast. It's gonna be a great time. Plenty of breakdown as always, as the NFL's has been crazy this year. So I can't wait to talk about that a bit more. And the Raiders, huh?
Yeah.
But we'll call it there. But thank you so much for tuning in for the Collateral podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to drop down below and check out all our socials. I'll be linking Taytem's Twitter down there as well. So on behalf of us, have a lovely rest of your evening and see you next time.
A lot of champions.